There's no magic potion or secret. It's just attention to detail and a lot of work. When I decided to do this video, I started trying to group my thoughts together, and I realized that I do a lot of little things now that I haven't read about in any books or heard of anybody else doing. When we come home empty-handed from a hunt, it's because we either wasn't at the right place at the right time or we messed up. What I'm going to show you is how I find the right places, how I know when to be there, and how to avoid a lot of the mistakes that'll get you busted. Now, I've been busted literally thousands of times, and every time I try to figure out what it was that got me busted and what I can do to avoid that in the future. Now I'm going to cover several aspects of the hunt: trail cameras, tree stands, stand locations, scent control, shooting, tracking, and recording your hunt. Now let's start with trail cameras. You want to set the sensitivity to the highest level possible and set it to take 1 picture a minute. If you're taking more pictures than that or taking video, you're going to spook some of your deer. If you set it on 3 to 5 minute intervals, you're going to miss some of the deer. Charting the movement at each stand has been one of the biggest factors in my success. If you're not charting the movement, then you're going to be spending a lot of your precious time in a tree where there's little to no chance of seeing deer. It's not enough to know that there's a buck using a certain area. The patterns are changing constantly. So ideally, I want to know what has happened in the last 48 hours. And that'll be a good indicator of what's going to happen tomorrow. For each stand that I have a piece of paper, and it's broken down into 24 columns, one for each hour of the day, and you put the date on the sides here. When a deer comes in at 3 o'clock in the morning on the 26th, then I'll have 26 here, and then a doe, I put a D, or if it's a 6 point, I'll put a 6. So I have an idea of what's coming in at that time. Okay, here is an example of why it's so important to chart your deer movement like this. This is 2 actual stand sites, and both of them appeared to have a lot of movement. There was a lot of feed gone, about the same amount of feed gone at each place. Deer tracks all over both of them, but this is why it's so important to track. On this, I've made orange lines here, approximately daylight and dark, to kind of give you an idea of what kind of daytime movement you have. Now, if I didn't have a camera on this, I would just as soon hunt this stand as I would this one. But as you can see, there's a lot more activity on this stand. Now this goes from the 21st to the 6th, the 21st of August to the 6th of September. This also goes from the 21st to the 6th, but there was several days between the 27th and the 5th, there was absolutely no deer came in this site. What you can't see just by looking at the tracks on the ground is at this site, there's about 10 to 12 coons coming in every night in a flock of turkeys that are taking care of the corn. So it makes it look like there's as much activity as there is here. Now I'm not going to abandon this site just yet. There's several nice rubs in this area from last year, and the deer are still in the bucks are still in their bachelor groups. So once they split up, good chance that there'll be a nice buck or two start using this area. All I've seen so far is a couple of 4 points, but that could change at any time. So I'll just kind of sit back and watch this and go in once a week and feed and check my cards and see what's happening. If by the end of September I've not seen anything worth hunting here, then I'll pull this stand and go put it somewhere else. Now this stand has got a lot of daytime activity, so I'll keep working it, and I actually took a doe about 10:45 there on the 3rd of September. So if you're not charting it, you're not going to be able to glance at these and say, oh, okay, well, I've got good daytime movement right here. right in the middle of the day. So this is a good place to hunt, because if you've got 6 to 8 stands going, you're not going to be able to remember every hour that an animal moved during that day. We all know that weather changes have a big impact on deer movement. When you chart this movement for a while, you'll be able to better predict what's happening just prior to a weather change or after a weather change. There's a lot of data out there about the moon phases. And for several years, I've tried to correlate the movement that I see with the moon phases. And all I can say is, I don't think the deer that I hunt read those moon charts. Now, it doesn't matter what deer in other areas are doing. What matters is what are the deer in your area doing. And by charting this movement is going to give you the best indication of what your deer are doing. As for tree stands, the most important thing about a tree stand is it has to be comfortable. For me, it's got to have armrest, it's got to have a sling seat. I've had several hang-on stands in the past where I dreaded hunting in them because I knew after a couple hours my back was going to be hurting and my butt was going to be numb. If you're not comfortable, you're going to be moving around, and that movement's going to get you busted. Now, I can't stress enough how important it is to avoid being seen in your tree. After a deer sees you in your tree, they may never come back to that area. If they do, they're going to be looking for you. And now you've educated that deer, and it's going to be a lot tougher to hunt in other areas as well. I use both hang-on stands and climbers. I really prefer the hang-on stands with climbing sticks because it allows me just to slip into an area without making any noise and set up. But climbers will allow you to hunt in areas where a hang-on stand might get stolen, or it'll allow you to have trees on either side of the trail so that you can play the wind. As for stand locations, always look for a funnel area. Now, this may be where a bench narrows or at the head of a steep draw, anywhere that's going to force the deer to go through a smaller area. Now, you can use Google Earth to find likely spots, but ultimately you need to get out there and walk it out and look for trails and look for old rub lines. Once I've located a good spot, I want to find a tree that is 20 to 30 yards perpendicular to the trail. So if the trail's going like this, I want my tree 20 to 30 yards out here. Now, ideally, I'll look for the tree in an easterly direction from the trail, since the prevailing wind in the fall is from the west. If I'm going to use a hang-on stand, I want a large tree with several limbs to help break up my outline. If I'm going to be using a climber, I want to find the largest tree that I can climb easily. It's always good to have a tree picked out on the opposite side of the trail in case the wind is not favorable for the tree that you originally picked. Because if a buck has been in an area the last couple of days during daylight hours, you need to be there. Now, you also want to keep thermals in mind. If the wind is real light or calm in the mornings, your scent's going to be carried up the hill. In the evenings, it's going to be carried down the hill. Once you have your tree picked out, look at your tree from the trail. Make sure there's plenty of trees and limbs and stuff in the background to break up your outline.